Bienvenidos a Tres Respuestas, un espacio de discusión, de ideas y de propuestas. Nuestros invitados de hoy son muy especiales. Está con nosotros Audrey Tang y está también con nosotros Glen Weyl. Uno de los temas más interesantes de nuestro tiempo es la protección de la democracia y la protección de la democracia con tecnología. Así que tenemos a dos de los grandes líderes que en el mundo están utilizando la tecnología para la defensa de la democracia. Audrey Tang ha sido uno de los grandes defensores de la democracia en Taiwán. Y Glen, quien ha estado también detrás de este proyecto, han estado viajando por todo el mundo, están en Colombia y están alertando sobre los riesgos que tienen las democracias por distintas amenazas relacionadas con la tecnología, pero también cómo contenerlas. Audrey and Glen, it's such a pleasure to have you here in Bogotá. It's such an honor to have you here in Tres Respuestas. And I'm going to begin with one question. Why do we need technology today more than ever to protect democracy?
Of course. In Taiwan, we have witnessed that since 2012, 2013, there's this technology called social media. It has retweet, it has like, it has share. We initially thought it would be more democratic because it gives everybody the voice. But it turns out it's not equal. It only gave people with the more polarized, more extreme, louder voices. But the people who actually are in the middle, the centrists, the bridge builders, they are not given voice on such platforms. So we learned that firsthand. And so, which is why we're now developing and supporting technologies that collaborate across those differences. For example, in Taiwan, in like WhatsApp groups and so on, there are now technologies that are open source. Anyone that sees a misinformation, is something that is wrong, and so on, can just provide context and say, oh, this is actually wrong, and I think this is a better context. But instead of prioritizing the ideas that are more polarized, it surfaces the ideas that convince the people both on the left and on the right, or both on this side and the other side. And these technologies have been adopted by Twitter, community nodes, by YouTube, and so on. So we need more technology for bridge building because of the anti-socialness of the social media from 10 years ago.
But there's something that I will also pick on you, Glen, is social media strengthening democracy or is it weakening democracy?
Mejor que hablo en español.
Perfecto, como quieras.
Creo que la pregunta no es los medios sociales, es los medios prosociales o antisociales. Pues tenemos más de la media antisocial ahora que la media prosocial. Pero en Taiwán han demostrado que hay medias prosociales también. Y ahora creo que la verdad es que la gran mayoría son antisociales y están bajando la fuerza de la democracia. Pero tenemos la oportunidad de cambiar esta dirección, no solo decidir pro o anti social media, pero qué tipo de medias sociales queremos.
Well, if I reflect on that, and I also put this in the context of your life history, there's something that caused a great impression on me, and it was how you became pro-democracy technology activist being very young, how you decided to create this movement in Taiwan, how you created the awareness in Taiwan, and how you were able to change in some sort of way the political digital landscape in favor of democracy. And after that, your name, your cause became so powerful that even the politicians that were not looking at the things that you pointed out invited you to become a minister in Taiwan. Why don't you share a little bit about that life history and how that life history today is in favor and put in the cause of defending democracy globally?
My parents are both journalists, but they are also entrepreneurs. Nowadays, we call them social entrepreneurs. So my mom was one of the founders of the Homemakers Union, which turned out to be one of the first consumer cooperative in Taiwan. And my dad was part of the community college effort. So even from the very early age, when Taiwan was not a democracy, we only became a democracy and elected our president in 1996. So even during the martial law, when I was a small kid, I hear from a lot of people from the cooperative movement, from the community college movement, how important it is that government is not just working for the people, but must be with the people, making sure that people have the means to make decisions themselves in a cooperative setting. So that's my childhood. And so when I learned programming, I learned this open source movement, which says that we as programmers, instead of dictating how the people must use our products, we should share the recipe of how to make such products, and people can remix it to their liking. So for example, the ideas that we shared about pro-social media and so on, it is pioneered in Seattle, but it's used in Taiwan. But then Canada took it and translated it to French because everything needs to be bilingual. And the Finland people took it into the Finnish and asked the Finnish people what they feel about their democracy and so on. If it's not open, then it is siloed in one country, another country. But because it is open, it can spread across different nations. So in 2014, we had this Occupy movement where many students occupied our parliament peacefully for 3 weeks because they thought that the conversation about a trade deal with Beijing was not transparent. It is not deliberated in a way that is cooperative. So they occupied the parliament. But we say they're not protesters, they're demonstrators because they demo, they show how with the facilitation, with the tools we just talked about, how 500,000 people on the street, many more online, instead of fighting each other, they can turn this conflict, this diversity into coherent ideas. And after 3 weeks, those ideas were accepted by the head of the parliament. So it's a victory of a Occupy, which is very rare. Usually Occupy diverge, but this is an Occupy that converge. And so after that, I was invited to be a reverse mentor, a young advisor to the cabinet on how to listen to people, not just to speak to people. And after 2 years serving as a young reverse mentor, I became the minister in charge of digital participation.
I think that's a beautiful experience, but also it helped bridge a divide and persuade in positive instruments of communication.
Yes. In 2014, the trust in democratic institution administration in Taiwan was 9%. But in 2018, when we started institutionalizing these, it grew to 20. But during the pandemic, it grew more. And now at Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, my president's second term, when she finishes the term a month ago, it's now over 60%. So people really trust the democratic process. But I'm not part of any party. I'm a bridge maker across parties.
¿Puedo ilustrar
Claro,
la
Glen.
fundación de su método de su historia personal? Porque soy productor ejecutivo de una documental sobre su vida y cuando estaba niña, ella tenía un problema de su corazón. Y este problema significa que si se enojaba, ella va a morir. Y pues
Tocaba mantener el corazón calmadito.
hasta la edad de 12 años no podía enojarse. Y pues tenía la necesidad de entrenarse a tener calma, siempre calma, en todas las situaciones. Y pues, y también en su escuela había mucho bullying, porque ella estaba un poco nerd y cosas así. Pero porque a este tiempo estaba hombre, no chico, no chica. Y pues la expectación es que los chicos van a defenderse. Pero para ella, si se defendaba, no podía sobrevivir porque tiene que enojarse a defenderse, ¿no? Y pues cambia non binaria y también entrenó a estar totalmente calma. Y pues esto es la fundación de este método a causa de sus problemas personales.
So because I think that story, it's fascinating. Me encanta la forma en la que está esa historia y me encanta el documental. Ahora quiero que hablemos del documental también un poco. But that part of your personal life, you know, remaining in calm, not being able to be angry, not allowing yourself to be angry, not allowing yourself to have emotional distress, but also being able to have the courage and the decision and the temperance to make your own personal decisions and embrace now bigger causes in which you have to be persuasive, and you cannot be persuasive with anger. So you have to be persuasive with arguments. You have to be persuasive with a genuine voice and being able to listen. How do you think new generations can and have to learn from the experience that now you're pushing forward with the foundation in order to defeat maybe one of the biggest challenges that we have today, and it's those who want to build up political names by infuriating, by trying to generate polarization and trying to create turmoil? How can we avoid that based on your own experience and the work that you're doing with the foundation, Audrey?
Yeah. So in my personal experience, I get upset easily if I touch my small touch screen because it builds addiction. It makes it feel that, you know, the phone is part of my hand. So I always distance myself using a stylus. So we spend some time together, right? So you can see I prefer larger screens, I prefer stylus, and so on. And in fact, in Taiwan, we ban the use of TikTok in the schools up until they're 18 years old, where they can make their own decision. But for children, we give them larger screen like tablets and so on, and interact with them, not with a touch screen. And this makes that us sleep better, because a sufficient sleep means that we do not become polarized by the daytime experiences. Our brain can process those emotions and wake up with calmness, with chill, with insight. But if you're addicted to your screen and you keep scrolling, you cannot sleep and so on, then one ends up waking up quite infuriated, polarized even by those polarizing tactics. So more sleep and less scrolling on the screen, it seems very trivial, but it is actually part of the curriculum, part of the education that we pushed in Taiwan. And when we designed the curriculum, we emphasized it's not good to be just consuming. Even with media literacy, you're just consuming. It makes more sense to be active. And once you're typing, once you're recording voices, once you're speaking, doing video, podcasts, and so on, you become a creator. And when you become a creator, you become immune to that polarization attacks because you start thinking like a journalist, like a producer.
También tenemos la idea que no es necesario solo combatir o
confrontar,
estar en contra de los vendedores de odio. Porque el conflicto no es el problema. El problema es que siempre estamos reforzando las mismas líneas de conflicto. Pero si hay conflictos que cruzan las divisiones que ya existen, pues estos son una forma de hacer un puente entre personas en diferentes partes. Pues los que venden odio, si podemos utilizarlos, si cambian las líneas y no reforzaron los que ya existen.
A mí eso me gusta y me impacta mucho. Y voy a hacerte esta pregunta, Glen. And I'll also make the question to you, but there's a book that was published recently that has created a big impact on me that is called The Anxious Generation. With Maria Juliana, we have 3 teenagers. One that is 17, our oldest daughter. Matias is 13, turning 14 this summer. And Eloisa that is 12. And we regularly have conversations about technology. But something that impresses me is that now in the teenage population globally, there is like a virtual digital addiction, and you have to be using your touchscreen every moment. And there is now a report or a book that came out by John Clifton, the CEO of Gallup, where he has described that there is a loneliness pandemic in the world. And instead of going to with the common wisdom that the loneliness is in the elder population, it happens to be that the sentiment of loneliness is now in the younger population. So I combine that with the sentiment of anxiety that is also narrated in the anxious generation. And you've pointed out things that I would love to maybe pick more. One is that you said in Taiwan, we banned TikTok until a certain age.
Yes.
What else should be done? Or what have you detected in that anxiety in younger generations? And how the effectiveness in trying to avoid that anxiety by allowing the youngers to be more creative, it's also a way to prevent further confrontations or further crisis.
Yeah, and I mean, if you just ban TikTok use for one child, that child is isolated from the rest of the community, so that doesn't work, right? So what has to be done is a school-wide ban, but still, the children want to be on the internet. They want to learn from the internet. So it's not a ban on internet. They can still, if they want, use the tablets. We have one laptop or one tablet per child policy, so they still have these larger screens. But with larger screens, they use stylus, they use keyboard, so there's no addiction. So they can still view the video if they want, make the video if they want, but always with the producer's mindset, not as an addictive consumer's mindset, not as a user. You know, we use the word user also for addicts, right? Drug user, right? So they're not users, they're fellow creators. This is the most important thing that we need to teach them in schools, is to be competent in making digital contributions in a journey of discovering creativity together. It is not about passively consuming and making this very anxious competition on status, like I post a photo, only 5 people press like, I take it down the photo, nothing like that. It is about co-creation, making things together.
Glen, you want to add something there?
La verdad es que Audrey tiene mucho más experiencia que yo en hacer acción en estos temas. Soy más un investigador, pero es remarcable a mí que en Taiwán hay más penetración, más disponibilidad de la tecnología que casi todo otro parte del mundo. 50% de su ingreso nacional es de exportación de tecnología, pero la loneliness, no sé cómo se dice, soledad de las generaciones más jóvenes es uno de los más bajos del mundo desarrollado. Pues creo que toda tecnología tiene la oportunidad de ser una dirección que puede sostener y mejorar las relaciones sociales, pero solo si tenemos la actitud que podemos manejar la tecnología, no solo acelerar o pararlo. Pues esto es el problema. No sentimos que tenemos la agencia a manejar. Y si no podemos manejar la tecnología, la tecnología va a manejar nosotros, ¿no?
Muy interesante. Y me pone como a pensar en otras cosas para preguntar. But I want to switch a little bit to Taiwan, the importance of Taiwan, and why the world should know more about Taiwan democracy. Obviously, Taiwan is a vibrant democracy, and it's a democracy that it's also doing permanent experiments of citizen engagement, but you also are in a pressure circumstance, and it's now everybody listens and hears and watches outlets about an eventual prophecy of a Chinese invasion in Taiwan. So there's a lot of conversations in the West and in the global South whether this is going to happen and whether there's a real threat. So let me begin by asking, in that particular topic, do you think Taiwan democracy is in danger today by an eventual Chinese invasion?
Well, if that is the case, if the probability is high, then TSMC and now NVIDIA will not have so high a market cap now. NVIDIA, and in the time of our recording, is one of, I think, the most valued company in the world. But all the supply chain, everything that makes those chips, the AI and so on, are in Taiwan. And so if the market thinks that Taiwan will be annexed tomorrow, it will not have the market cap it has. So I think we're in an okay situation now. But it is not because that Taiwan by ourselves can defend against annexation or other threats. It is because nowadays, especially after the pandemic, all the democratic countries in the world come to see Taiwan as not just the most liberal place, one of the most democratic place in Asia, but also very critical in making sure that democracy continues and democracy thrives. Because we're making so many experiments, as you said, advancing democracy. And it is like vaccine, like a cure for polarization. And if you destroy the lab that makes the cure for polarization, then democracies around the world suffers, right? So it's not just the chips or the AI or the economy, but it's also the democratic experiments that we're making and contributing.
Creo que esto es la cosa que la mayoría de personas no entienden, es que sí, saben que los chips más avanzados del mundo se depende de Taiwán, y si hay una invasión va a haber un gran problema para la economía global y digital. Pero es también la democracia. La democracia más avanzada del mundo está en Taiwán. Y si algo pasó allá y no puede continuar esta democracia, la democracia de todo el mundo va a bajar. Porque democracia, también como los celulares, necesita avanzar o va a morir.
Well, I'm a defender of democracy, and that's why when I hear the idea that we have to worry about Taiwan because Taiwan produces X percent of the world chips, and if there's an invasion, we will lose the chips. I don't think that's the real controversy. I think that the real debate is we have to defend the Taiwanese democracy. It's a very important democracy in the world. It's a very important democracy in Asia. And I think it's a great reference model also because, as you will say, it's one of the most advanced democracies. So what can the Taiwanese democracy teach as lessons to other democracies in the world, and primarily to the Colombian democracy? You're here in Bogota. You're going to participate in various events. What are the lessons from the Taiwanese democracy for a democracy like ours?
Yeah, so one, I think the most important is that democracy is not just about 4 years every vote from this side to that side to that side, right? Because if people think of democracy as something that only happens every 4 years, then the younger people lose interest in participation. But in Taiwan, some of the most active participants in our democracy are people younger than 18 years old. So they don't even have a vote, but they already started e-petitions. They already attended the participatory budget sessions. They set an agenda for the conversation around environment, around human rights, and so on for the elderly to have conversations around. So youth engagement, I think, is one key thing that Taiwan has to teach to the world, how we enable the youth to care about democracy in a constructive, not a destructive way. The other thing is that because we're very advanced in AI, we already have ways for have citizens assemblies, town hall meetings, and so on, that you just pick up your phone or WhatsApp or whatever you have here and have an online conversation. And a machine learning model, a AI model, just make sure that people speak their mind. So you don't have to type. You don't have to read a lot of bureaucratic documents. You just speak what you feel during the pandemic, what you feel about the masks, what you feel about contact tracing. Nowadays, what you feel about online social media and so on. And automatically, it becomes summarized by AI in a way that reflects people's common understanding and become law, become legislation, and so on. So the power of people just speaking to their WhatsApp, to their phone, and listening to what other people have to speak, that is also a form of continuous democracy. This is also something that just become possible this year because of AI, and this is something we're happy to share.
So that's something that I definitely wanted to ask you, is because I've had this conversation with friends and philanthropists and people who are concerned about the future of democracy. What should we do well in order to use AI in favor of democracy and not pass from artificial intelligence to artificial democracy?
Exactly. That's great. We call it ACI, or augmented collective intelligence, where AI is assisting the democracy. It is not authoritarian intelligence where it replaces democracy. So we need to focus on the functions that human facilitators do. Think about your community meetings. Sometimes there are moderators or facilitators, and their job is to translate between different viewpoints, to provide fact-checking, to ensure there's an accurate summarization, to ensure that the agenda that is set by a minority does not get ignored by the majority, and so on. All these facilitative functions can be done with AI. But AI, just like my eyeglass, is not a replacement for my eyes. It is just to help me see better. So we need to steer the AI toward those assistive, augmented uses, and not to say, oh, we already know what the optimal solution is. We don't have to ask the people anymore. The AI is a crystal ball that makes all the decision for us. We don't go that way. We don't go AGI. We go ACI, Assistive Collective Intelligence.
Creo que la religión cristiana es una manera de pensar en esto muy fuerte. No queremos desarrollar un idol. No queremos hacer un Dios, AGI. Queremos seguir las palabras de Biblia que dicen en Mateo que los que hacen el paz son los niños de Dios. Y esto es que puede hacer la inteligencia artificial, puede hacer el paz. ¿Por qué no pensamos que el meta más importante de estas cosas es solo seguir las palabras del Biblio? Esto es idea muy sencillo que puede dar una guía a nosotros en pensar qué es el propósito de estas tecnologías, yo creo.
Since we're running out of time, and I could spend the whole day and the whole year and maybe the whole century asking questions, because I really love your insights, and also Audrey and Glen, how you are communicating this throughout the world, and the fact that you're here in Colombia is something that we really take as a big honor. Two things that I want to connect. One is, can we foresee a social media world in the next years without bots? And the second, and that will be the last question, what would you advise to any parent in the way to nurture their kids' relationship with technology?
That's great questions. So the reason why we're running out of time is that I am part of the Project Liberty. I'm a fellow, like the author of The Anxious Generation. So we're just about to have a meeting to solve the problem.
Of course.
But I think this is a really good question, because for bots on the social media, if they masquerade as human and you build a relationship with them, then it feels isolation. It makes the human relational nature into something transactional. So it is very, very important. In fact, in Taiwan, we say if a bot post advertisement reaches a lot of people, very soon they will have to digitally signature. A real human have to sign on that message and become accountable to it. So this is very important. And the use of digital signature, and widely speaking, it's called attribution or provenance technologies. We expect that to become the normal thing, the norm over the next year. And so for the parents out there, I think just the fear of missing out of conversations that drives a lot of addiction. So listen to your children and participate in whatever activities they're doing with a larger screen, with a tablet if you can, but at least share the screen with the child, be part of their experience, and then they will not be captured by the fear of missing out.
Nice. Glen, documental. When are Colombia people want to be able to watch the documentary?
Hay un trailer ahora, no tiene subtítulos españoles, pero quizás podemos usar inteligencia artificial para juntarlos, pero el documental total, que es un poco corto, de 21 minutos más o menos, va a publicar en más o menos agosto. Y se llama Good Enough Ancestor. No sé cómo se dice.
Good Enough Ancestor? Yeah. I don't think there's a perfect translation. I just love the title, which I think is great. Yeah. But
this is very related to what Audrey often says, and maybe we'll say it at the end, free the future. Porque if you're too good of an ancestor, then you actually close off the possibilities for the future.
Right.
If you're a bad ancestor, you don't give the opportunities.
Right.
But you don't want to be perfect.
Of course.
You want to be modest. You want to give the chance for your children to do more than you have the vision to do. And that's the idea.
Yeah, a good enough parent is one that admits that I'm not perfect either, but I will co-create, I will join the children in figuring out things together.
Well, I'm so happy, Audrey, Glen. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for being here in Colombia. Gracias por estar en Tres Respuestas, and it has been a great honor to have this experience.
Live long and prosper, y
long and prosper.
Liberamos el futuro juntos.